In this video, we're looking at 10 speed buffs from activatable items. And to clarify a bit more, by activatable, I mean the item in question must be clicked on to work. This also means there will be no player abilities, passives, or crafted consumables on this list. And at number 10, we have Egg Basket from the Noble Garden. This cute little basket can be placed in the offhand weapon slot, and when clicked, increases the player's movement speed by 60% for 10 seconds. There are actually two of these baskets, since there is an exact copy called the Borrowed Egg Basket, which is given during a quick Noble Garden quest called a Tisket, a Tasket, a Noble Garden Basket. Unfortunately, these two items share the same cooldown of 10 seconds. However, since the cooldown has the same duration as the speed buff, you can continuously move at 60% speed as long as you instantly recast it. The best way to accomplish this is to put the egg basket in your action bar for easy access. We'll briefly discuss the history of this item since it's undergone some major changes. Noble Garden was added as a holiday and classic, but the egg basket wasn't added until Wrath of the Lich King. In Shadowlands, the egg basket was turned into a cosmetic item which could be learned, and an additional reward from the aforementioned seasonal quest was added, which is a toy called Egger Basket. Because of this, the original egg basket offhand item with the clickable speed buff is no longer available in retail, but it does still exist in Classic. However, players do receive an item called the Borrowed Egg Basket in their inventory when they acquire the quests, a Tisket, a Tasket, a Noble Garden Basket. This quest item is the exact same as the original Egg Basket, so a form of the original Egg Basket does exist in the current game. The Egger Basket toy and Borrowed Egg Basket quest items keep all of the same restrictions as the offhand item did, which we'll go over now. The Egg Basket items and the Egger Basket toy have two main drawbacks. First, it can only work during Noble Garden, which only lasts a week around Easter. Second, it only works in certain areas around capital cities where there are brightly colored eggs hidden. The basket can only be used in small designated towns near major cities across Azeroth. For the Alliance, these areas are the Azura Watch, Dolinar, Goldshire, and Karanos. For the Horde, these are Bloodhoof Village, Brill, Falconwing Square, and Razor Hill. The Egg Basket is only at number 10 on this list for two reasons. First, its original version is no longer obtainable in retail, and second, because it requires the player to be at a specific location and the fact that it has a 10-second cooldown. While the fact that it's a very small area of use is a little bit of a damper, it does make sense so the players don't abuse the Egg Basket out in the open world in dungeons and raids and PvP. At least you still have a chance to turn into an adorable Noble Garden bunny while gathering brightly colored eggs. The only downside to being a bunny, other than occasionally dropping an egg from your rear end, is that taking any action while in bunny form, such as using the egg basket on your action bar, removes the shapeshifting bunny form, which is a quick way to put less of a spring in your step. And at number 9, we have the Golden Hare Figurine. This trinket has both a passive and active ability. When equipped, it increases your run speed by roughly 8%, but when this trinket is clicked on, it increases speed by 30% for 6 seconds. In addition, it also simultaneously prevents new snares from landing on the user for 6 seconds. This made the trinket quite useful, especially while running away from pulling a large pack of mobs and trying to escape in PvP. The Golden Hare Figurine was added in the Burning Crusade, can only be crafted by jewel crafters, and its recipe drops from mobs in the open world. To craft it, a jewel crafter requires 2 gold bars, 2 citrin, as well as a skill of 200 in TBC jewel crafting. There are 2 interesting tidbits about this trinket. Although added to the game in 2.0, the Golden Hare Figurine originally required the jewel crafter to use 2 cut citrins instead of just regular citrin. The only problem was that cut citrins were never added to the game. And so when TBC first came out, it was unknown if the trinket was just a troll by TBC developers or simply a bug. It finally became craftable in 2.1 when the cut citrin requirement was removed and replaced with just regular citrins. The second interesting fact is that when you use this trinket, a cute little bunny rabbit appears next to you and follows you around for a bit. Although very nice, this little bunny isn't enough to overcome the fact this trinket is only a 30% speed boost that only lasts for 6 seconds and has a cooldown of 20 minutes, which is quite long. Wrath also saw an almost identical version of this trinket called the Ruby Hare Figurine, but this time crafted by jewel crafters from Northrend Materials. The item has better stats than the TBC version at the time, but its speed ability when activated was exactly the same. And at number 8, we have our first item from Classic, the Nifty Stopwatch. Although it was removed in Cataclysm, it's still one of the most interesting trinkets in all of WoW. The Nifty Stopwatch, when used, increases run speed by 40% for 10 seconds, which is impressive even by modern WoW standards. It is a trinket which is awarded after a short little quest chain in the Badlands, and it is a quite literal little quest chain since the player helps out a gnome by trying to invent some things. Although there were some Badland quests in Classic, this one certainly stands out not in just rewards, but its questline, which had the player running around collecting various parts for an invention the gnome is trying to make. Finally, on the last quest, the gnome accidentally summons an elemental guardian and the player must defeat it. The gnome, who is named Lotwell Variatus, then gives the player the trinket in gratitude. The Nifty Stopwatch was considered an optional best-in-slot utility PvP trinket for several classes in Classic, specifically balanced druids, paladins, and hunters. Unfortunately, the trinket has a 30-minute cooldown, meaning when not in use, it's probably better to equip a different trinket. Although it was removed from the game with a world revamp in Cataclysm, Blizzard should think about adding more unique trinkets to the game such as this, instead of removing them and replacing them with simple stat sticks. The Nifty Stopwatch is not only useful, but it's also fun, something which most WoW trinkets routinely lack. And at number 7, we have the item named the Swift Boots. This craftable item comes from the leatherworking profession and has been in the game since WoW launched in 2004. The Swift Boots, when used, increase the run speed of the player by 40% for 15 seconds. The pattern for Swift Boots dropped from elite mobs in Classic and redone Cataclysm zones. To craft these boots, a player will need to have learned the pattern, have a Classic leatherworking skill of 200, and obtain the following ingredients: 10 heavy leather, 2 swiftness potions, 2 thick spider silk, and 1 silken thread. In total, it requires 3 professions to create: leatherworking, alchemy, and herbalism. Because of just how good the activated speed boost they give is, the Swift Boots are not usable in arenas. They were also changed in patch 3.1 to no longer work when a player was carrying the flag in Warsong Gulch battlegrounds. In fact, in a perfect application of the ability, the boots make getting to any place 6 seconds faster. The Swift Boots also do have their downsides though. Their cooldown is 20 minutes, which is an acceptable cooldown given what they can do. However, the boots are leather armor since they come from leatherworking, which means only classes which can wear leather items can use them. In Classic WoW, this was only druids and rogues since monks were added in Mists of Pandaria, and demon hunters in Legion. Although, since any class which can wear mail and plate can also wear leather, this basically just meant only cloth wearers were not allowed to use the boots. And at number 6, we have the Skull of Impending Doom, an offhand item obtained from a Classic quest. Interestingly, like the Nifty Stopwatch, this quest is also located in the Badlands. While slightly different in Classic, in TBC the item increased your run speed by 60% for 10 seconds, but it also dealt 100 to 500 damage and drained you of 100 to 500 mana every 2 seconds. This means if your HP is at full over 5000 and you weren't taking any other damage, the skull's damage wouldn't kill you. Luckily, since the buff is clickable, the players can remove the buff whenever they wish, which stops both the buffs and the debuffs. The buff the item gives you is called Flee, and the player will make clucking sounds when the buff starts and stops. This clucking sound is the same one heard when doing the /chicken emote. The skull only has a 5-minute cooldown, which is quite short. It made it widely popular for many different applications and builds in both Classic and the Burning Crusade. The item is a quest reward from Forbidden Knowledge. This questline focuses around an archaeological excavation where some old god relics are found. The item has some quite insidious implications, hence the Impending Doom part of the name. The quest may have been loosely refitted to meld with the dwarf excavation site in the Southern Barrens and Cataclysm, but that's just speculation. On a related note, since all the quests in Badlands were removed with a world revamp in Cataclysm, the Skull of Impending Doom was also removed and can no longer be obtained in WoW post-Cataclysm. And at number 5, we have the 2 Rocket Boots. These are classic engineering crafted items that come from 2 forms, the Gnomish Rocket Boots and the Goblin Rocket Boots. Both boots when used provide a 50% to 70% increase in movement speed for up to 20 seconds. Of course, like most Gnomish and Goblin inventions, the boots come with some dangerous and explosive possible side effects. First, let's take a look at the Gnomish Rocket Boots. These boots are usually preferred since the Goblin ones have a tendency to explode. However, the Gnomish Rocket Boots do come with a warning: their power supply and gyros do not always function as intended. The speed buff can last for up to 20 seconds, but they also have a chance to not work properly for the duration of those 20 seconds. If the Gnomish Rocket Boots malfunction, the player will lose control of their movement and the boots will move them in random directions while also stunning them. The boots also have a chance to root the user in place for 20 seconds. The Gnomish Rocket Boots have a 5-minute cooldown, but they also break after several uses. They have been continuously nerfed since the Burning Crusade, and modern WoW they barely do anything now. The boots are crafted with Gnome Engineering skill of 225, and their recipe can be learned from trainers. Now let's talk about the Goblin Rocket Boots. While very similar to the Gnomish Rocket Boots, there are some important distinctions. The tooltip for the Rocket Boots reads, "These dangerous looking boots significantly increase your run speed for 20 seconds. The Goblin Boots provided a slightly faster speed buff than the Gnomish Boots do, but the Goblin Rocket Boots are also prone to exploding. When they do explode, the player's boots are turned into Scorched Rocket Boots, which can be looted to gain a few materials back that were used to craft the item. The Goblin Rocket Boots are created with a Goblin Engineering skill 225 and is taught by the trainers. The cooldown of the boots is 5 minutes as well. While unpredictable, both the Gnomish and Goblin Rocket Boots provided one of the best temporary speed buffs from an item in the game. Fortunately, they were cost so all classes could use them, but you still need to be an engineer to use them as well. As one would expect, they could not be used in arenas or while carrying a flag in battlegrounds. Aside from that, when they do work properly, they're one of the most unique pieces of craftable gear in the game. And at number 4, we have Rocket Boots Xtreme. These boots are essentially an improved version of the ones from Classic, but with 3 very big differences. First, these Rocket Boots come from the Burning Crusade and require a skill of 30 in Outland Engineering to craft. Secondly, they are far more reliable than the Gnomish and Goblin Rocket Boots, and they will not break. Finally, the Rocket Boots Xtreme really are extreme, as they give the players an 80% increased movement speed for 2.5 seconds. The Rocket Boots Xtreme are not without their own limitations, however. Occasionally, they can backfire, igniting the owner on fire briefly. Once again, the player must be a classic and wear leather to use them, and have engineering profession as well. Finally, the schematic for the boots only drops from meching your Steambreaker in the Steam Vault. The drop rate is close to 1%, but luckily the schematic can be sold in the auction house. When the Rocket Boot Extremes are used, the player gains a buff which is called Rocket Boots Engage Ludicrous Speed. This is a reference to the Mel Brooks screwball comedy movie Spaceballs. There is also a similar item called the Rocket Boots Extreme Light. It is almost exactly like the regular Rocket Boots Xtreme, but with some major differences. First, the light boots are cloth, not leather, and have lower stats than the regular boots. To reflect this, the schematic calls for 8 bolts of netherweave instead of leather. Finally, the schematic for the Rocket Boots Xtreme Light dropped from Mecha Lord Capacitus, who is the boss in the Megadeer in Tempest Keep. The schematic has a drop rate of 2%. And as a quick fun fact, it wasn't until the final patch of the Burning Crusade, patch 2.4, that the Rocket Boots had a shared cooldown. And at number 3, we have a trio of special items from around Pandaria. The bag of Kafa beans, oddly shaped horn, and the tuft of yak fur all work similarly but all have slight differences. When used, these items summon a special mount that runs around all by itself in whatever direction you're facing. All these 3 items are uncommon and all have 3 charges and all last for 20 seconds. As noted in the tooltip for each of these items, this is a very, very fast mount. So fast in fact that they give you a 300% speed increase, which is the same as a flying max speed mount. Now let's break these 3 items down individually. The bag of Kafa beans is an uncommon item with an almost 100% drop rate that can be looted from Zing, which is a rare mob goat in the Kuline Summit. When used, the item summons a Kafa crazed goat. The oddly shaped horn summons an unruly sun-graced behemoth Bushan. Sun-graced behemoths can be found on the border between the Jade Forest and the Valley of the Four Winds, with the drop rate in the horn close to 100%. The final summable mount is the Angry Yak. This item can drop from Pangsong, a rare elite mob in the Dread Wastes, but it also has a roughly 2.5% chance to drop from any yak mob in the Timeless Isle. The tooltip for the tuft of yak fur says, "It's so fluffy," which is a reference to the movie Despicable Me. What makes all 3 of these items so great and so high in this list is that they can be used anywhere outdoors, not just in Pandaria. This means they are great ways to get around from place to place, especially if flying is not allowed. Unfortunately, you cannot loot more than 1 of each item at a time, but still each of these 3 items are essentially an instant cast mount that lasts for 20 seconds, and they can have a lot of uses, so they're at number 3 on this list. And at number 2, we have the Hook of the Master Angler. This handy trinket, when used, turns into a fish, allowing you to breathe underwater and increasing your swim speed by 35%. The Hook of the Master Angler is one of the 5 prizes only the first place player can choose when they win the Stranglethorn Fishing Extravaganza by handing in the most speckled tasty fish the fastest. This is completed by doing a quest called the Grand Prize. The model of the fish you turn into is a frenzy, which is analogous with the piranha in the real world. The Hook of the Master Angler has been in the game since launch and was only changed in Wrath when it had its cooldown removed and its swim speed increased to 35%, which was a 10% increase from its original 25%. The item isn't the only item in the game that lets you turn into a fish. In Legion, a special blessing on the fishing pole of the Underlight Angler granted a similar effect. The cooldown on the trinket is 1.5 seconds, meaning it can be used quite quickly again, and is one of the items with the fastest cooldown that lets a player change their appearance in the game. A Druid swim form only has a 50% speed increase, so there's no real need for a Druid to use a trinket unless they want to be a fish for some reason. Finally, the Hook of the Master Angler does not break stealth when it's used, which is quite rare. The trinket is so useful in so many applications, especially if you don't want to waste any money on potions for underwater breathing, or don't have access to a Warlock's Unending Breath spell. Because it's so overpowered, the Hook of the Master Angler lands at number 2 on this list. And finally, at number 1, we have the Falling Flame. This unique uncommon item comes from the Timeless Isle in Mist of Pandaria. It is dropped by the rare elite named Cinderfall, who can be found near the broken bridge leading to the Temple of Ordos. This item functions similarly to the Hunter ability Disengage, except on a much larger scale. When used, the item launches the player high into the air, sending them hurtling across the sky. It can be quite literally throwing a player across zones and continents, since when aimed correctly, the flying can last for up to a minute. Even better, the item has 50 charges. The item itself applies a knockback power of 999 to the player who uses it. To be honest, I'm not sure how fast the speed is, but it is way faster than any mount. There are 3 downsides to the Falling Flame, however. Although the player will be killed by the fall damage upon impact with the ground, this can be avoided by several means. The most common being deploying a Goblin Glider in midair. Another problem with this item is that it has a less than 2% chance to drop from Cinderfall, and that is assuming he's even up. The other downside is the item has a cooldown of 1 hour, so plan your fire meteoring with care. The uses of this item are near infinite, from fast traveling to scaling obstacles to quick escapes. It works nearly everywhere outside and not just in Pandaria. The item is one of the most fun in the entire game and everyone should experience it at least once. To make it even better, you can still move, aim, and change direction while you whiz through the sky, making it way more dynamic and fun than you would expect. This is pure speculation, but this item might be one of the reasons behind adding dragon riding to the game. The Falling Flame is just fun, and it definitely deserves to be the number 1 spawn on this list. Alright, and that's the video. One quick note before we go is that many of these items in this list actually have a shared cooldown, even though it would be hard for someone to use more than one. Blizzard certainly wants to make sure no one is having too much fun. I know this is kind of a weird topic, but it felt niche and kind of interesting to do anyways. That aside, are there any items you think should have been in this video that we may have missed, or have any ideas for future videos similar to this one? If so, please let us know down in the comments below.